Napoleon supposedly claimed that an army marches on its stomach. But as the generals of the Confederacy quickly learned, soldiers actually march on their feet. During the American Civil War, those feet were the engine of the entire military machine. In the early 1860s, Robert E. Lee built his military strategy around rapid, flanking maneuvers. He relied on commanders like Stonewall Jackson and A.P. Hill to move troops across vast distances at punishing speeds. Moving thousands of men at that pace ruins leather and soles at an extraordinary rate. Despite ordering fresh footwear from Europe as early as 1861, the Confederacy could not keep pace with the wear and tear. They were critically out of shoes almost immediately. The South certainly faced a massive deficit in men and artillery, yet the evidence points to a far more mundane failure, a political system that systematically left its own men barefoot. The most brilliant tactical flanking maneuver on paper cannot be executed if the men required to march are physically unable to walk. A common explanation for this shortage is that the agrarian South simply lacked the manufacturing capacity to clothe an army, but the records tell a different story. North Carolina alone possessed 42 textile factories. That infrastructure produced twice the material output of the rest of the Confederacy combined. Governor Zebulon Vance's commitment to the doctrine of states' rights turned his state's industrial power into a local stockpile, a strict interpretation of the very philosophy the Confederacy was founded on. This map shows the flow of those resources. Operating on the belief that he should only supply his own local citizens, Vance hoarded 92,000 uniforms and vast quantities of shoe leather strictly for North Carolina regiments. While this massive stockpile sat secure behind state lines, troops from neighboring states were marching on empty depots, completely cut off from the supply chain. A fractured political philosophy effectively paralyzed the supply chain, making it impossible to equip a unified national fighting force. On the front lines, this administrative failure quickly turned into a series of tactical disasters. By the Battle of Shiloh in 1862, 60% of Confederate soldiers present were wearing scavenged Union coats and hats, desperate to stay warm. Dressing thousands of your own men in the enemy's uniform in the middle of a chaotic battle creates severe confusion. The resulting friendly fire caused substantial and entirely preventable casualties. The sheer lack of footwear cost Robert E. Lee dearly on the operational level. Historical assessments suggest the inability to march men into position cost him a victory at Antietam, and at Gettysburg, thousands of soldiers were completely sidelined, unable to participate because they had no shoes. In Tennessee, General Hood's troops faced severe winter conditions. At one point, 25% of his men were forced to march entirely barefoot through snow and freezing sleet. The sheer desperation eroded unit cohesion entirely. Shortages became so acute that a soldier who took his shoes off to sleep was almost guaranteed to have them stolen by the man next to him. This level of primal desperation over winter footwear isn't unique to the American Civil War. It is a universal reality of poorly supplied armies. During World War II, freezing German soldiers on the Russian front resorted to stripping felt-lined boots from dead enemy combatants, but because the corpses were frozen solid, the boots were fused to the bodies. Officers ordered their men to hack off the legs of the Russian dead below the knee. They then placed the severed limbs into ovens, waiting just long enough for the flesh to thaw so they could pull the vital boots free. Deprive an army of its most basic survival equipment, and it systematically loses both its operational capacity and its humanity. In a final attempt to stem the crisis, Confederate authorities pulled 2,000 active soldiers off the front lines and assigned them to do nothing but manufacture and repair shoes by hand. It was a panicked reaction to a complete systemic collapse. Relying on slow manual labor while fighting an industrialized war meant the effort came far too late to change the outcome. We often frame military history around brilliant generals and heroic charges, but those elements are secondary to the supply chains that put the men on the battlefield in the first place. The extreme commitment to states' rights hollowed out the Confederacy from the inside, destroying its ability to distribute resources and wage a modern war. Ultimately, logistics is the quiet, unbreakable dictator of history.